Hey guys, Happy New Year. I'm so happy to be back. I've taken a couple weeks off from posting or being online, and it was much needed. And during that time, I've really thought about what I want to focus on for the new year, especially on this channel. And what feels so important, I think almost above all else, is communion. So I am going to be sharing a lot more conversations. I'm going to be connecting a lot more with people. I'm going to be hosting online retreats and hopefully in-person retreats as soon as it's safe to do so. And I really just want to connect at a deeper level. So I wanted to start off this new year by sharing with you a conversation that I had with Taheera Maat. I'm probably butchering her name. Taheera is someone I found on Instagram a few months ago, and I love what she's talking about. She's really honing in on the conversation of resonance and how it's all about resonance, how to fine tune your own personal resonance to your own personal heaven on earth. She's really tapped into that same conversation. And for those of you who've been following me for a while, you know that that's the conversation I've been tapped into as well. So when I messaged her and asked if she wanted to have a conversation with me, she was so down and she was like, let's talk about relationships, sex, and money. And I thought those are the perfect topics because as we step into deeper levels of personal sovereignty, really what we're doing is stepping into deeper levels of intimacy with our creative abilities, with our sexuality, with our body, learning to be as embodied as possible. That is part of regulating our resonance. So I thought this conversation was really cool. I hope to have more conversations with her, and I highly recommend you go follow her on Instagram. That's primarily where she's active. She does also have a YouTube channel. I've listed all of her information in the description box below, and I will also pin it as the top comment so that you can see it. If you guys are interested in diving deeper into the conversation of sex, money, and relationships, then I highly recommend joining my Abundance Matrix Mastermind group. These are the topics we're going to be focusing on for the new year. I've updated what we're going to be doing, and I also have a special sale going on for the first week of January, and that's where you can get in a one-time fee in my mastermind class. It's usually monthly payments. So check out the link in the description box to see the sale, to see what we're going to be doing, to see what we're up to. Also, I recommend going to my website, amandaflaker.com, and signing up for my email list so that you can make sure you receive my videos when I do them and also hear about all the stuff I'm doing. As the algorithms continue to change online, sometimes I just get buried, and I hear a lot from you guys that you don't see my videos and you get unsubscribed from my channel. I don't know why this happens, but if you love this content and you want to get this message out to more people, I highly recommend subscribing, hitting the notification bell, but definitely go to my website, amandaflaker.com, and sign up for my email list. I'm going to be doing a special giveaway this week as well. So if you sign up for my email list, you will automatically be entered into a giveaway for a free session with me. So I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas. I'm so excited to dive into 2021 with you, to really go into deeper levels of embodying heaven on earth because we're needed right now. Empaths in particular are needed. People who can transmute energy, people who can hold space, who can witness, who can feel, that aren't afraid to feel things that are hard to feel. You are needed right now. So I hope that this conversation inspires you to really get deeper into your body, into your sexuality. It's going to be important in this next phase of our journey together. So without further ado, here's our conversation. Okay, cool. So we were kind of already jumping in, but I think number one thing I want to start with is just how much gratitude I feel for you. Because honestly, like, I don't even know how I found you. I think someone shared something of yours and then I watched it and I was like, this girl is speaking my language. And the way that you not only radiate that resonance that I feel like I've been in touch with and wanting to integrate myself, but I love the way that your whole way that you show up online is sovereign. It's in sovereignty. That's what I would say. You feel totally sovereign to me. And that sovereignty is something I've been talking a lot about. Resonance is something I've been talking a lot about. Communion, relationship, and how that's all connected to abundance, which includes money, and it includes the very 3D world that we're in. And so I wanted to dive into a conversation with you about all that because I feel like you have such a grounded and yet deeply spiritual perspective and spiritual isn't even the right word anymore. It's like, it goes beyond that.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's like, even when I think about the word matrix, I'm like, I don't even know if I want to call it the matrix anymore. It's like something different, right? So that means that on the spiritual end, like we have definitely transcended into like a whole new like definition, of what spirituality even is at this point.
I heard someone say the matrix, that the deeper root word for the word matrix was womb. And I was, whoa, womb.
That's deep. That's deep.
Yep.
Yeah, that's deep. That's deep, because if you think about wombs, it is a different womb. It is. It's like a wormhole, and people get sucked in, like the conscious state gets sucked in. And I just did a podcast about the womb, and I talked about how coming back to your womb power is about embracing all of yourself and coming back to the love frequency of who you really are, and disconnecting from the outside forces. So that makes complete sense. That matrix is like this other womb that people are connected to. Like I could go on about that. Like I thinking about Kundalini now, and the umbilical cord, like
so, yeah, and how a womb would be a certain resonance that you're getting formed in. And when I think about when I've thought about like when the whole aspect of the abundance matrix and the lack matrix came through to me, and I used that language, it was very technical on purpose, because I was understanding mentally, almost like a computer game. Like I had to understand this is a program, and
that's it.
But what's deeper, what's even deeper than a program, or the deepest essence of a program, is a resonance. The resonance, and we get formed in that. And so to me, like the womb of abundance, getting formed, like allowing ourselves to dissolve and then be reformed in that womb until
exactly. I
want to know about like what your journey has been with this, and kind of how you tuning into this and
stuff. Man, well, I think with most of us, when we awaken, we realize that we've been on a journey since we were since we were born into this. But I always just bucked the system, if you will. Always had questions in relationship to why are we here? Who is God? And it was just something early on that just kept me going and kept me questioning about certain things. And, I call all processes here in human as initiations to get back to sovereignty. So it's like each process that we go through is part of coming back home to self. And when I got that, reservation and a resonance about it, I began to really take my spiritual experience to like other levels. So it was like in my early 20s, I started to meditate every day. I was in a really deep depression, clinically depressed, suicidal thoughts. I just came out of a situation where I used to be an exotic dancer. Like I'm very candid, I'm very transparent about my life. And those years that I was doing that definitely, I always say there was the good teachings about it, and there was those teachings that I had to heal from. And so I was healing from some of those teachings. And I was in a deep meditation one day, and this throne came to me. It was like this picture of a throne. And I realized it was my throne. And it was like, I felt definitely like the first eye. I call it the first eye, kind of like decalcifying and awakening that part of me. But what I realized was that there were other essences sitting on my throne. And these other essences were ruling my world. And that pissed me off. Like I was in a meditation, like this pissed off, like, are you serious? Mm-hmm. And, something came over me where I said, like, this is how people function. Yeah. Like people function from other people's archetypes and essences. People are really controlled on a subconscious level. Mm-hmm. We really don't know until you do that deeper work. And just through meditation within itself, like we just talked about, I literally went through a rebirthing process when I went into the light. Not that particular meditation, it took some time, but I went into the light. And when I awakened, I literally was like balled up like a baby. It was just so powerful to me. I was crying and depression was lifted, and I could clearly see the matrix. I could clearly see it. And I'm like, okay. And I knew that my work was not done, but that was definitely the beginning of my journey. And I just kept on deepening my spiritual work. I got into shamanism, I got into energy healing. And also I went to school to be a therapist. But when I went to school to be a therapist, I realized there was something wrong with that system. Like there was no type of spirituality in it. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, I'm just going to utilize this as is and take that and integrate it into all the other healing modalities that I'm learning outside of this. And so throughout the years, it just kept on building and building and building. And, I call myself like the 2012 crew. When that like 2012 hit, I'm like, oh, I got to get up out of here,
Yep.
But I still have work to do. I still have work to do with the womb that we talked about. And I talk about that mother and daughter womb relationship. Because I think sometimes when we talk about the womb, we talk about ourselves, but realize that you came out your mother's womb and she came out her mother's womb. So there's this generational connection there. And how does that apply to how you're functioning in this life? Mm-hmm. So I came into that realization, and I started to really heal me and my mother's connection. And the more I did that, the more I realized I was like disconnecting from like this umbilical cord that kept me away from myself. So, I tell people it's a different process for everybody. Everybody has like a theme, that they have to heal or they have to graduate from. And definitely for me, the mother-daughter womb healing was a major one. And it still is because she is sick. So, just still holding space for her in that way, but being free from her. It's interesting. It's just very interesting.
That's the sovereignty piece. Like it's a part of that. And I'm curious too, in relation to that, do you feel that part of those essences that you saw on your throne are connected to generational stuff, like with your mom, with her mom? Was that
the essences that I seen, and when I say I seen, it was like a morphing of so many, right? So I couldn't pinpoint like faces and things like that, but I definitely could pinpoint the feeling. So some of them came from my own experiences, like my own traumas and the people I have met along the way and how I put them on this pedestal, and then there was like, definitely some deeper layers of those different type of essences that were like, I'm like, where is this coming from? And I realized that, we hold all that in our psyche. And it is part of like the program. It is part of the matrix, if you will. And the whole goal, if you want to call it that, is to like clear that and clear your mind up. And that's why I say the temple purification, purify your temple to really come back into your all-seeing, into your all-seeing eye, come back on your throne to self. And that's what helps you really see clearly what you're connected to and what resonates for you. Like you feel it, because if you're plugged in mentally, psychologically, it's hard to find that resonance, right? Because you're so drawn into manipulation and control. Mm-hmm. And so, it was definitely one of the first pieces to me coming back home to self. Like it was definitely one of those transformational experiences.
Do you feel like your experience as an exotic dancer and in that kind of realm, the resonances in that space? I feel like a lot of how we get enslaved is through sexual energy, both the religious side and the secular side, and in every realm.
Yeah.
What does it mean to come back to your own essence? Because I feel like sexuality, and especially as a woman or just that feminine energy, it's so essential to stop. So I'm curious, like the wisdom you gained in that space, because I feel like people who've been in that space at all have so much power and wisdom to reveal and unlock about the subtle ways that we get enslaved and the subtle ways that we get free,
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Man, that was that was definitely a different type of world. And it does put you in, like you said, a whole nother level of um, inner education of your own sexual power and also of sexuality within itself.
Mhm.
So, one of the big things I learned was Tantra, and just understanding the sexual power that one can have in order to truly control and manipulate, if you wanted
Mhm.
to get what you want. And yes, I played that role many times because I was in that realm.
Mhm.
But it was so interesting because I was so open to my spiritual growth. I actually met a tantric teacher like when I was dancing. It was this Indian man, like just like out of nowhere. So it was just really interesting. And he kind of schooled me on like how you don't have to do much in order to get what you want out of here.
Mhm.
And he pretty much taught me the role of Kundalini, not in a sexual way though. It was more so the power of this, your Kundalini energy that ties into the sexual energy of the universe.
Mhm.
And so what happened was, through that process, I learned to get myself out of situations that could have caused me more harm, because psychologically, I wasn't being so drawn into the control of the money. Now I realized I had control.
Mm.
I'm the one who manifests this. So therefore, I'm like, okay, when whatever I want tonight, like whatever, how much money I want, I'm going to get, and I don't have to work hard for it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's just, I said, this is fucking powerful. So,
Yeah.
so,
Exactly.
but and also with the female and male, um, essences and all these different characteristics that were coming in there, I really learned people. I learned just the psychology of men and their behavior at a accelerated way. All types of men from all over the place, and also women as well. And what I really came into this understanding towards the end is like, people just want to be loved.
Mhm.
That's pretty much what it is. And we know this, right? But it's the distortion and it's their own experiences that get them into these worlds, searching for some type of touch, some type of attention, some type of understanding. Most of my work was talking. That's what, most of my work was just like talking, having a conversation.
Mhm.
Especially working with that teacher, I really learned just like, what a person needed. And that's exactly how I present it. And most people are lonely.
Yeah.
And so they come into that world looking for some type of attention. So it made me have even more compassion, honestly,
Yeah.
for just a human experience, and how many people are so lonely, how many people are not satisfied in their own relationships, how
Mhm.
many people get used. Because I have used men in there, I have used women in there. I wasn't like this like angel in the place, like no. But at the end I started to find the balance in it all and really realize why my spirit like kind of led me into that realm.
Yes. I
Yeah.
honestly think it's one of the most powerful grids to have data
Mm,
in, because it
yeah.
is, we come from sex, we come from sexuality,
Hmm.
for creative essence, it's everything
Yes,
we are,
it's everything.
and
Yeah.
yet it's manipulated through fear, guilt, and shame. And that has to
Hmm.
get tied in my mind, to the lack matrix, or to that space
Yes.
where we're out of sovereignty, where something else is on our throne, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that whole, I call it the scarcity mindset. And it's like that control that they have over the Kundalini, over the sexual power, is based off of the scarce and the scared mindset. So a lot of people are controlled underneath a sexual spell, if you will, and they use, like, of course, social media, Instagram, they use all of that technology to continue to put people underneath this scarcity hypnosis. And when I did a survey one day on my Instagram story saying, what is the content that you would like to see more? of talking about. And like 90% said sexuality.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it just shows where the collective is, like really trying to understand their sexual energy.
Right.
So there is this level of knowledge that people want to receive, but I do think sometimes people get so hooked on kundalini, tantra, and now they're just looking at more of a physical than more so the spiritual gains that you get once you actually take your sexual power back.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would love to hear what your experience from a resonance standpoint, from being in a place where you feel like you weren't in your sexual sovereignty to shifting to more sexual sovereignty. And I think this is connected to relationships. I know you talked about that the first time we talked a little bit.
Yeah. So, when I just remember, those times when I didn't have the power and I will allow these outside forces to pretty much do as they please. Of course, as we know, as spiritual beings, there's always that voice that's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? But you still do it anyway. So, and I really would feel the trauma, not necessarily physical trauma. I haven't experienced physical, but psychological, and the impact it had on me. And that's why I went through such a really severe clinical depression and just this whole distortion of men in general and just relationships, overall relationships. But when I started to come out of that and really gain back my sexual power, I realized that it was bigger than, again, like I said, sex. It's more so creating your earth, creating your world, creating your abundance. And I'm like, shit, I'm a goddess. So I started, I started to just say it, and affirm it, I am a goddess. And all these different types of downloads start coming to me. That's when Maat, my yacht, that archetype came to me. And it really resonated with me, and it opened up this whole other grid of just ancient intelligence. And I always say, they awaken the DNA coding inside of you, and now you can really create your new earth, which I definitely feel this is the time that we're in right now. And so the Kundalini awakening is definitely different than the Kundalini integration. So a lot of people talk about the Kundalini awakening, and we all experience that through creative flow, through sex, anything that arouses us at that level. But the Kundalini integration is literally unlocking all your chakras. And it's like, if you ever saw a picture of it, it's like this picture that the rainbow of the chakras kind of burst out of your crown, and you're just connected, man. You're just, the world is yours, and it's like this big veil lifts, and this is what sovereignty is. That is the sovereign moment. And it's you can't come down from it. It's it. You got your soul. Spirit is congratulations. Okay, let's rebuild.
And I would say one of my biggest awarenesses since I've been doing all this work is that most of us reject our pleasure. We reject or feel about it, or we don't put ourselves in the equation. We let our physical pleasure, or even I've been thinking a lot about the psychic pleasure. When you have a conversation with someone, the pleasure in the resonance that you share, and in that tantric way, moving towards what feels best. It's a lost art. And I feel like if we cultivated our sexuality and embraced it and allowed it and let our sexual urge be the thing that we allow to move us.
There you go.
It's that's part of that piece of breaking through. So
yes.
Locks on that are all the programming we have about what it means to be a powerful creator, what it means to actually allow yourself to feel pleasure and to feel good, and because how can you have heaven on earth if you can't experience pleasure?
Exactly. It's all part of it. I love that you brought that up, because I even, when I talk to women just about their sexuality, and I talk about, my dancing, and I say how oh, she's still with me. There's parts of me that are still her, and I embrace her. And then I was like, well, let's look at, again, what we're into right now. We're into like the Cardi B's, the Nicki Minaj's, the Kim Kardashians, you know, we're into these over the top sexualized women because there's something inside of you that is yearning for that freedom and hasn't fully exercised that yet. But when you exercise it, you no longer, again, put them on a pedestal. You realize it's just a reflection of something that is inside of you that you need to awaken. Yeah. So I love how you put that pleasure piece in, because that is part of being active as a woman, is to show our sexual energy and our it's sensuality that they exude. They exude sensuality in such a way that it creates, you know, in one side confrontation, another side you just like, yes, thank you. But either way, it's like, use that as a recognition that that's inside of yourself as well. And then this is for men and women, you know, this is for men and women, understanding that, like you said, the pleasure, you know, learning to play in that is really important. And understanding that it doesn't have to be so serious all the time. Yeah. Like, you know, spirituality is playful, it's very creative, and it comes from that inner child state of staying curious.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that spirituality, at least for me, because I grew up from a religious background, so spirituality and sexuality were always like,
oh yeah, me too.
Like, what a disservice that was to my spiritual growth.
Such a disservice.
And I had always, from the time I was younger, I always felt very sexual. I would fantasize about being an exotic dancer. I never did it, but I was like super curious about that world. And because there was something magnetic about that power. And I remember Madonna, when I was younger, having that effect on me, like the way that maybe Nicki Minaj or Cardi B would. I remember fascinated by the fact that she just owned that.
Yes.
You know? And obviously, like, I've evolved it in my understanding of it up to this point, but I just feel like these topics, sex, money, relationships, spirituality, it's all connected. It's all kind of one and the same, but it's
all connected.
Yeah. But the triggers for so many people are sex and money. And so, and I know when we said, what do we want to talk about? We brought up money, or you brought up money as well. And I'm curious, that piece for you, the money piece with this creative sexual piece with the spirituality.
Yeah. So like sex and money and power are in the same form. They come from the same place. And I like to always think of the planets and how the planets have certain characteristics. I always say if you know, the planets governs us every day, because every day there's a different planet that comes in, and that is the energy that we're in, even if you're conscious about it or not. Like, that's the energy that's kind of like governing the energy of the world. So in relationship to I say God, sex, power, money, Mars. You know, Mars is that planet that is all about that. And so what we have seen throughout our upbringing, throughout what the Matrix has been like, again, underneath this hypnosis, is seeing the manipulation of that planet and seeing how that energy of Mars is in direct connection to your sovereignty, to your kundalini, to your creative power. It's in direct connection of that. So if when we talk about the relationship piece, that's where your relationships are at. So if your relationships with your friends or your family is kind of imbalanced, then usually on the other side of that is a balance within the money, or imbalance with your sexuality. It's all tied in. And it's like, well, what governs you? Who is your God? And so when you talk about that scarcity mindset, and I talk to spiritual people about it, you know, they're like, oh, I'm so spiritual. I'm like, okay, great, you know, awesome. But it's like, you know, we talk about, okay, but you broke. Yeah. Let's just put it out there. You broke.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, you know, and they're like, well, I don't, believe in the money. I don't believe in, that's a part of our currency. That's a part of our abundance. Like, I don't tie that in. And, we'll go into a deep conversation about it. And then, I asked him, well, what have you invested in? Like, inside yourself? Like, what programs, courses, whatever that you took and invested time and money into without looking for a deal, without looking for negotiation. And they just got, they get quiet, And I'm like, so it means that you allow money to control you.
Yeah.
You allow the lack of money to control you. So therefore, that is your God.
Yes.
That is, and it's like, that is the collective. That's pretty much the Matrix collective. Yes. And so the reason why I bring up financial sovereignty a lot is, like, I think at this point, it's kind of like the missing link to people really, getting out, understanding that your gifts are your abundance. There's no separation. Like, your gifts, your creative energy is your abundance, and currency and money is a part of that, you know? And it's like, if, so that's like the conversations I've been having lately.
Well, and they're so important, because if we truly want to create the new world, we've got to work with where we're at. And if we have no power in where we're at, which the reality is we use money on this planet, then we're missing a part of the grid that we can't really influence. And not a tiny part of the grid, it's a huge part of the grid.
Yeah.
And we need people who, I believe we need people who are quote unquote spiritual to have money, It's important if we're investing in a new world. And so what I hear you saying, and I've kind of come to this as well, is that the most basic way to break it down is, what is your relationship to your own power? And what is, and how are you exercising that power? What are you, and I feel like that unlocks another huge part of that psychological warfare, is that we're afraid of power, and yet we want power,
Yes.
And we believe we have to go out here to get power. So then we're willing to sacrifice to get it, because we believe it's something we don't have and we have to negotiate for.
Exactly. And it's like I call it the prostitute archetype. It's like you're constantly prostituting yourself. And it's because, like, people are having this dialogue around what is power and how is that related to me, and afraid to take that power on, afraid to embrace, like, you are a powerful being. Do you realize that?
Yep.
And want to stay stuck kind of like in the back end, and want to stay stuck in the shadows of who they are, but at the same time want more. And this is where the negotiation comes in, but that's where a lot of the souls are stuck at. They're like stuck right in that gray area before they reach that next level. And so that whole relationship and programming around God and sex and money, it's all in this in this Matrix program to really control Kundalini, like to really just continue to control Kundalini. And I love at the beginning when we talk about, like, the womb, like, it is a womb. Kundalini is connected to your umbilical cord. So it's like, you're connecting to a whole different womb. It's a robotic AI type of energy womb, reminds me of, like, the Matrix, and how Neo comes out of the other side and unplug. Like, it's like the same thing.
Yeah, that's exactly, it feels like it's just to me, the program is right, wrong, good, bad, this, that, black, white. That's why it's robot. When we try, because we're manipulating Kundalini through those terms. We're deciding, okay, what are you going to sacrifice versus what's right, what's wrong? Who are you going to back? Who's good, who's bad? The whole game is about sort of deciding what's worthy to be alive and what's not, or what we're going to sacrifice, or what. And I feel like the key to abundance is deciding we don't have to sacrifice anymore. There's no sacrifice.
There's no sacrifice. Yeah. And that's coming into, like, full spectrum of really who we are. And I even talk about that in shadow work, where people say, again, there's all these different things in the esoteric world, but I say it's not so much getting rid of your shadow. It's about integrating your shadow. Like, your shadow got wisdom. Your shadow got some messages for you. You better go ahead and integrate that shadow, because that shadow essence is a part of you. You need the dark with the light.
Yep.
You know, you need that, especially in this existence. Like, it's just what it is.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about, like, there's no getting rid of anything, exactly, everything's in full spectrum. That's how you really come into making your choices at a sovereign level, because you realize, like, oh, I can do that, and I will do that, and you do it. You know, and that's it.
Yep.
That's it.
And in doing it, I feel like we start to rebuild our trust with life, which is rebuilding the trust with the Kundalini.
Yes, absolutely. And rebuilding trust, like, really rebuilding trust with your soul.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that soul consciousness, that God consciousness, like fully trusting in the unknown and coming into the realization that unknown is literally just a remembrance. That's all the unknown is. It's just a remembrance.
Yeah.
So surrendering to the flow is surrendering to the Kundalini. And it's also awakening the divine feminine essence, because Kundalini is a divine feminine essence. So now, and that's been part of the imbalance of this world, is that we've been so masculine with everything, right? So now it's like bringing in that divine feminine essence again. That is the Mayat. That's the balance that we need in order to bring more of a harmonic vibration into our lives.
Yeah.
So it just, that's what's needed.
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense, because when I think of the divine feminine, I think of like divine chaos in a sense, divine ability to receive at that. If we've been this far on the masculine side, then we need to come up on our ability to receive and allow and surrender, and yet still stand in our power, you know? Because,
that's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think there's something so insanely powerful about the feminine spirit, because especially as embodied in a woman, like in the space of what it means to be a creatrix altogether, you know what I mean? That there's the embodiment of that power, I guess is what I'm saying. It's not just it literally shows up in physical form, and
exactly.
there's something about that is, to me, especially because of how much it's been controlled and enslaved, as that comes up, it has the ability to just, like one of my colleagues once said, if all the women in the world, or the feminine spirit, whether you're male or female, but if that part, if we allowed it to scream, if we gave it a voice, got primal, if we just got primal, we could shift residents on the planet overnight.
Hell yeah. Absolutely. It reminds me of the podcast I did about the raw feminine, and how, like, you just awaken into that. It is this level of a primal energy, and some people may look at it as a bit, you know, angry or upset. No, it's just like, I haven't allowed myself to scream in a very long time, so that's what I'm doing. Exactly. You know, no matter if it's no matter if it's through like expression of art, no matter if it's through words that I say, no matter if it's through song, no matter if it's through, like I said, we talked about the creative play. And when you allow that feminine energy to awaken and just be, it's like, it does impact others in such a great way. Because there's something vibrational that awakens inside of them. And like we talked about earlier with these women nowadays, because, you know, back in the days, like, my thing was like Janet Jackson, you know, and Little Kim. But, you know, nowadays you have these women who embody that head on. You know, now how they are portrayed in society, you know, that take for, you know, if you want to judge that, but really it's about how they embody that raw feminine essence. And again, that's what people are really in search for. People are really in search for, like, how do I do that? How do I experience that? And I'm all like, just be yourself. Like, allow that part of you to show through. And this is where I talk about, like, you know, coming from the line heart, like just say what you need to say, express how you need to express it. And that's the resonance, right? And anytime when you feel like it's not aligned, don't be afraid to take that stand and say, you know what, I don't have to participate in this. And you just don't.
Yep.
So
exactly. A friend of mine, also a colleague, she had a major Kundalini awakening and then started channeling all these primal sounds. And she didn't put it out at all. It's just a few people she would like show to, or would just come over her sometimes. And like, it was insane to be in the same room as, because the resonance, I could feel shaking stuff out of my field. And then she shared a video in one of my private Facebook groups, and several of the people in the group got activated, but one of the people who got activated, he said as he was listening to her, his body started moving involuntarily and he started howling. And then he said he could feel the divine masculine, the wounded divine masculine crying out. And he said he translated the whole thing to his body and then started having vision after vision after vision, past life vision, like all this crazy stuff happening. And that was just through a primal sound, through hearing a primal that was channeled. Because I feel like something about having that much sovereignty over our physical vessel, where we could allow the energy to move in that way, it literally does shake out trauma, stuff that has been expressed or transmuted.
Absolutely. And like, you know, if we think about how we present ourselves as women in movement, like we are mesmerizing, you know, we have hips to move, we have our lower body is like, again, it's part of that serpent energy. So it's like we naturally can provoke activations and initiations just through sound, just through movement. You know, I think about sisters that I know, and they could just sit there and, you know, men are going fucking crazy. Like, you know, they just, and it's because of the aura and the essence. It's like, they got it on lock. So it's all about finding your unique way of provoking that. And again, learning to play with that, learning to be creative with that.
Yeah. Would you say tapping into that, learning to tap into that, is just, because I would say it's such an intimate, personal thing that no one from the outside can really inform you how to do it. But would you say you have tips or like things that you help your clients to do to get in touch with that?
Yeah. So, you know, it depends on the person, because everybody's different. But it starts with the mind. For me, I always begin with the mind and the inner child. Those are the two. And when the people are like inner child and sex, inner child. Like, what is your relationship with your inner child? Because that right there is definitely going to determine how much growth you're going to do in really embracing your sexuality. And it's because your inner child has been underneath, you know, like you talked about, you grew up in a religious household. I also grew up in a religious household. So it's like, in that whole sexuality and how it was so divided from religion, it was just super weird to me. And that impacts how I felt about myself sexually. So it begins with the child archetype and learning to nurture that piece and reparenting that piece as the idea of how you want to show up in this world. That opens up that space for a healthy Kundalini awakening, you know. And then, you know, if women want to move into more of like, you know, more of the sexual, physical stuff, that's fine. But that's additional. Like, the whole point for me is to let me help you really awaken your power. Like, let's talk about awakening your power overall. And then from there, you go ahead and activate and apply the skills that you want and how to create your world, you know?
Yeah, I love that. I'm curious, I didn't ask you when we talked, but do you primarily work with like one-on-one with clients, or you do mostly content creation, or a little of both? Or
I transitioned. I used to work with one-on-one clients. I was doing that for over like 15 years, starting with therapy and then moving in more of the shamanic healing. But now I transition more into group work.
Yeah.
So I just find the group work to be so powerful, and we're just living in that communion time where we're just activating each other. And so now I created an academy online where I bring in, a nice intimate group of people, and we are literally going through a journey together at a group level, and it's very organic building. There's no structure behind it. Everything's strictly shamanic, strictly divine feminine from that essence. And what happens is like just the transformations that happen with that group process. And I literally tell people, I'm just holding space. Like I'm giving you some information, but it's really y'all that is are mirroring each other. And it's amazing to witness just such the great transformations. So mostly women are attracted to my work, but I am open to men coming in. So this past cohort, there was 2 gentlemen that came in, so, and I love that. I love that energy in there, because it does give it a different energy, a different frequency to have that male energy in. But I'm open to working with anybody who is ready, to really work on that next level. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, because I know that people who watch my channel, I feel like confident they're going to so resonate with you, the majority of them, because you speak such a similar language to me. And I feel like you bring a groundedness to it that I'm still really learning to integrate. So I would love to be able to, I'll put if it's okay, I'll put your information in the description box of this video and let people find you. You're primarily on Instagram, but you also have YouTube, right?
Primarily on Instagram. I do have a YouTube channel, but you'll find most of the content on Instagram.
Awesome.
Yeah. And like I said, I think you're amazing. And I do think like you're one of the most grounded people I have encountered as far as like high vibrational, high frequency, cosmic education. Like you bring it down on a level. It's like, you're really learning something from her, so.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I've loved this. I feel like if you're open, we could have many more conversations. I'm so curious to
I love that. Come on now. Of course.
I bet. I'm curious to see what the feedback's going to be. And I feel like we're going to start a conversation, because these are the pieces: communion, sovereignty, abundance, sexuality, kundalini, is what my friend Rachel calls it. And I feel like is what I want to dive in more. I want to co-create more. I want to just tap into people who are having this conversation, because I feel like that's how we make the resonance more palpable, more attractive, and kind of shift the
I'm all in. Like we're going, I do believe that there was somebody sent me, it's the healer's time. And she was like, it's our time. Like it's kind of like everything's kind of flipped right side up again, and it feels awesome. And so I do believe it's just our time to really reawaken this level of education that has been so completely wiped away from the consciousness, right? And we all have this blueprint inside of us to teach others and to help others. And I just think when you come together as a university and you have these different, teachers and professors and the messengers come in, you can really help people build a remembrance and a really resonance about who they are, for them to come back into themselves. So I'm all about the community build. I'm all about the partnerships. So yes, I would definitely love to come back.
Sweet. Yeah, let's do it. Let's keep in touch. And I think we could have a pretty cool little series going on. Did I cut out for a minute?
I'm sorry, you keep on. Yeah. Okay, there you go.
Okay. I was just saying, like, I think we could have a good series going on, the deeper we conversation. So yeah, I would love that.
Absolutely. Sweet. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for just being willing to come on my channel and have a chat with me. And connect deeper.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah, no, thank you. It's an honor.
yeah.
No, it's an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll send you this link when I upload it, and I'll put your information in the description box so people can find you on Instagram and find your content. And yeah,
Okay.
let's just keep in touch and we'll go from there.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I look forward. I'm gonna definitely share this. I don't share too many, but this one I'm gonna share. I just think
Awesome.
it's just necessary. Yeah.
Good one. Yeah, I feel like this is gonna resonate with a lot of people, so I'm excited.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you so much. Have a good day, and let's keep in touch.
No problem. Okay. You too.
Bye. Love you.
Peace. Love you too.